Good morning, everybody. So I've got a massive case of imposter syndrome at the moment. I am nervous, so forgive me. One of the quotes I remember on leadership is, leadership is your ability to hide your panic from others. And so just bear with me. But actually, one of the more interesting quotes was from a former Chief of the General Staff, Sir Mark Carlton-Smith, when he said in a staff conference, "You're the people you've been waiting for." And I think actually that describes what leadership really is. You're sometimes quite uncertain. You don't feel that you're the expert, but people are looking to you, and you are, and I think Rick mentioned, you're the innovator, you're not the imitator. I'm at National Highways at the moment. I've had a reasonable career in the military. So I'll sort of talk to you about highways and security. And it's great that you actually all know our product. You are all probably frustrated, travellers, etc. And I'm happy to engage with you during the breaks with all of your woes about the road network. But it is big. It's 4,500 miles. We've got tens of thousands of CCTV cameras, IT, OT systems. We've got 10 operations centres, a national ops centre. We run some really big capital projects. We've got the Lower Thames crossing. We've got A303 Stonehenge, which is global significance. And we're an arm's length body, and we're in the critical national infrastructure sector. So it is big, and so there's a real sort of concatenation of cyber, physical, people, etc., which challenge us every day. But what are the things that we're particularly interested in? Well, it's all that stuff up there in reality. There's a great piece from the National Preparedness Commission which talks about the tuna environment, and that's an environment which is turbulent, uncertain, novel, and ambiguous, and it speaks really to the tectonic plates that are shifting as we see them today. I think there probably is more certainty in the entropy that we're sort of seeing at the moment. I think also that we've got to overlay that with just the natural tension that we see in business. We're not necessarily getting more money. There are more pressures on us. So everything that we do as professionals has got to see that return of investment. And we've got to be able to pitch that to the people who are going to sustain us. I won't talk about sort of threat groups in detail, but the Microsoft Digital Defence Report's great. And they talk about tracking 300 different groups, 160 state actors, 50 ransomware actors, and then the one that really chimes with me is they block 4,000 password attacks a second. And so when you look at it, for us, identity really is where it's all at, hugely challenging security issue. We're now in the space where we've had AI and ML for a while, but generative AI is seeing things change, and I know we're talking about that later, so I won't sort of get out of my depth on it. But it really is offering risk and reward. We understand how it will amplify and accelerate attacks, but equally we've got to understand how we govern it within our businesses, because we see opportunity, and it can be fixed by AI, and it's that all-encompassing thing that people don't really understand how you expose yourself. So our governance of emerging technology has got to be, really tight. Data is a currency. We've got to understand the data across its life cycle, and we really look at it and understand what data, what the value is, and not just the value to us, but the value to the adversary. And so, our ability to manage data effectively is a real challenge. And we only have to look at the news with AT&T yesterday or the day before to understand how data can be used against us. We're in an environment with increased legislation and regulation, and I think going forward there's going to be a trend there. And we're just in an arms race. When you look at the Microsoft Patch Tuesday release the other day, when you look at the amount of vulnerabilities and those that have been exploited, it is just an arms race to get there before the bad guys do. And that's a real challenge, in particular when you've got a complex environment of IT and OT and a broad surface with suppliers. So it's a challenge, it's a good challenge, but it's one that we've got to be, really aware of. I think we'll talk more, as I said before, about AI and large language models and cybercrime, and I think there's an estimate of sort of north of $8 trillion in 2024, cybercrime when you look at it. And I think when you look at what happened with Arup the other day, all of us should be starting to understand how we need to now operate and how we need to start to authenticate in different ways, because the world is just changing around us. And then you get back to the normal stuff. Theft, trespass. We've got a protester hub and look at protesters, urban explorers, all of those things, as well as safety, genuine safety of our frontline staff. We've got a lot of traffic officers out on the network who are genuinely at risk. So we've got a really broad environment that we've got to secure and assure. So I say that I think we're in a year or years of living dangerously, to quote the films. A lot of film quotes from me. And with that, the threat piece there is largely a bit like a Mike Leigh film. It's all quite depressing. So what do we do about it? Well, our approach is, I think one that people can recognise. If you try to do everything, you'll just fail. So you've got to focus on the basics. You've got to focus on those things that are critical to you. And actually determining that can be a real challenge because everybody's got a different opinion of what's critical. And so you've got to have some rigour in there. And sometimes people say, just do the basics. But the basics actually can be really complex. I was at a panel the other day and the advice was, do MFA. Let's go, great. That absolutely agree with it. But when you've got numerous digital services, systems, etc., IT and OT, doing MFA is actually really quite difficult. So absolutely agree with it, but simple is actually quite complex. And so we've got to recognise not everything needs a big program, but even doing the basics can be actually quite a significant effort for us all. But actually, you do need to start modestly. And one of the things that we are looking at, there's frameworks galore, and we could all talk about ISO 27001 and NIST, etc. We've developed quite a basic framework where we're saying, do the 20 things well. Then you can move on. Because if we say to you, here's 108 controls that you need to put in place, we all recognise, the blank faces, or we just can't do that. So actually, I think we do need to have a conversation with the business, which is all about, assisting, helping them, getting the foundations in place so that they can incrementally develop and understand security and risk in a way that it is not overwhelming to them. Because fundamentally for me, security is people. It's you, it's us. It's our ability to talk to the business, to understand the business culture and their maturity, so that they can really consume our advice in the way that it's intended. But for us as professionals, we've got to be there to give that advice. We've got to be as capable and competent. And so that means recruiting and retaining talent. And I think, we're all probably seeing that is genuinely quite difficult. What do you need to retain in particular? You've got to have progress pathways. I was talking to a colleague the other day, beg your pardon, who was literally saying, I think I'm going to have to leave because I don't have the next step. I lost a graduate who was brilliant, absolutely superb. He's gone to a consultancy because he didn't have the next step. So actually, we do need to look at how we develop people, keep them in, or let them go, gain experience, and bring them back to us. I genuinely believe in training, but actually, with the evolving threat environment now, we've got to recognise that just doing a course doesn't cut it. It's about networking. It's about getting those communities of practice. And so we've got to give them the time. That's the most precious resource in many respects. As Richard Branson said, train them so that they can leave and treat them so they'll stay. And so time is important, but also our management of them and actually recognising the pressures they're under, because they are under a huge amount of pressure and stress. And so we've got to be human in our approach to them, and we've got to really manage them as people, not just as a resource. I love having people from different backgrounds. I've got medics in the team who approach security through, the lens of a medical examination. They go, hey, it's an investigation and examination are exactly the same thing. And so We've got to be broad in our understanding of what makes a good security professional, but we've got to then help them develop so that they can help the business. We've also got to understand that we're going to get hit. A breach is inevitable, and so we've got to also change the narrative that a breach doesn't necessarily mean failure. I think for me, failure is the preparatory moves. It's understanding the incident response mechanisms. It's looking at disaster recovery. It's looking at those plans. But you are going to get hit because the adversary is incredibly intelligent and intelligently aggressive. And some things are just outside of our control. You know, big supply chain breaches, for example. We just can't do anything about that. So we've got to make sure that as we're in that breach space, we're exploiting novel technology. Again, we'll come back into the AI, the large language model, how we can get inside the adversary's decision action cycle, how we can move from human speed to machine speed. And I think that's where, again, we've got to maintain our focus as we look forward. We've also got to exercise that. And I love the Mike Tyson quote that sort of everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And, it's absolutely true. We've got to test it. We've got to test those processes, but we've also got to test the people that are enacting those processes. And you're not talking about the first 11. You've got to go for those people who will be there at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and they're going to be your first responders. And so we've got an exercise program where we've been running through our digital services, and we've had some great findings. Our ability to access immutable data, just visibility of systems, some of those plans, things I think that everybody would recognise that are quite challenging. And also how you interlock business continuity, incident response and disaster recovery, because they're all related but slightly different. And so that's been a huge learning point for us. And the other thing that we've done is look at ambiguous scenarios. So there isn't a tea and medals ending to it. There is no solution, because then you're talking about people problem solving, and that's how you really get the process to work for you. But you've also got to look forward. And a great slide from our Cyber Futures team, produced by Scriberia. For us, it's great to be in the present, but actually we're also looking all the way out to 2050 with our Connecting the Country team. And this is where I think it's genuinely it's fascinating as you start to look at Industry 4.0. You start to look at quantum computing. You start to look at connected and autonomous vehicles. Just the ubiquity of data, and you start then to see how we're going to be really impacting on society. And for me, this is one of the most fascinating parts of the role, is that look forward, where there is some uncertainty, but you're picking those huge themes and running with them. And they are themes that we should all be looking at. The digitalization of society is just increasing around us. If we're not moving with it, then we are just going to fail our seniors. We're developing guardrails for all sorts of things, digital construction, connected autonomous plants, digital twins, just which are almost pre-policy positions. But you can only be a thought leader if people know what you're thinking about. So actually, for us, it's getting out, getting those communities of practice and talking this stuff through. And I really am genuinely more than happy to engage with you on this work in particular, because we really do want to promote what we're doing, because it's absolutely superb. But this is all really getting into the space of our ethics and values. It's about safety. It's about resilience. It's about trust and ethics. And we're doing a lot more now with our ethics committee. And I think, again, that's something that we have to do as a community. We're not just about process and controls. There are a lot of ethical considerations within the security domain, and I think that is just, again, on the rise, in particular with generative AI, etc. So we've got to be responsible as a constituency. But overall, I think we're really talking about the resilience of our organisations. When you put it all together, it is the ability to identify those threats, to prepare, absorb, etc. So resilience for me now is the strapline. I've been running a resilience program, and for me it really is it's the beating heart. If you're talking about individual controls, you're probably missing the big picture. Is my view on it. But fundamentally, it's back to people. It's about communication, it's about people. If we can't get the message across, then we are failing. And so, for me, the most important thing I can say on a daily basis is, how can I help you? I recognise in the business that everybody has got challenges, everybody's got those burdens, those resource issues, etc. I mustn't add to those. And so I really do go in with that, how can I assist you, and change that narrative really from one of sort of suspicion to that of collaboration. And that's something I think we're trying to imbue when we talk about security culture. It's not a security culture where you're there blaming everybody and berating them. You're trying to assist everybody, because I genuinely believe people are trying to do the right thing. And so for me, people are at the heart. We are imperfect, but that trust journey's got to start somewhere. And so my internal strapline, and what I'll finish with, is that I want to be there, be present, and actually above all, be relevant. So thank you.